Alright guys, today's video is going to be on another commonly asked topic, which is going to be which character should I use my milk on in order to actually dupe them and level up their skills. Now there are going to be two considerations you have to pay attention to when deciding this. One is going to be, is it necessary for you to actually upgrade that character in order to actually unlock their additional resonance skills? Because as we all know, when you actually use the milk on someone, you are essentially leveling up their skills, and when the total skill level for that character reaches a certain stage, for example stage 6 and also 10, you're going to unlock additional effects. Some of them can be absolute game changer, some of them are not going to be very important at all. So that's going to be the number one consideration you have to pay into in order to decide which one actually works for you to use a dupe on. Then the second thing you also have to consider is going to be the availability of that character, because certain characters in this game are actually going to be very easy to get, certain characters are actually going to be a lot harder to get and may even be kind of like semi-limited, and therefore it's going to be much more important for you to actually use those dupes on those more limited characters, because it's unlikely that you'll be able to get more dupes of them through your normal summonings, etc. So those are going to be the two main things you want to pay attention to. Now before actually going into that topic, I also want to raise the point of the timing of when should you actually be using your dupes, and that is going to be dependent on how good is your skill 3. And the reason is when you actually want to raise up your skill level with either dupe or your milk, what's going to happen is that you will randomly choose one of the available skills to level up. And what that basically means is that depending on how likely do you well, how good is the skill 3 that you need to unlock, you can actually increase the probability of the skill upgrade going into one of the other 3 and choose to not actually go into this but not actually unlocking it first. Or alternatively, if this skill is actually really good, what you actually want to do is you actually want to unlock the skill first before then trying to upgrade, so that you increase the likelihood of your milk going into the skill. So it's going to be down to how good is it for that character skill 3. I will just take a quick example here. For Asahi, personally, I don't think his skill 3 is very good, because it's very unlikely for his stamina to stay above 70%. So for me, this is a skill that you can potentially skip and you don't actually want to level up. So for Asahi, what I would actually recommend is for you guys to, for example, actually just upgrade it first without actually unlocking the skills. However, for a different character such as Tanaka, this is actually quite important because we are able to reduce the opponent's block and also stamina. So for Tanaka instead, I will actually recommend you guys unlock this first before actually upgrading Tanaka to a higher skill level. So that's basically one thing you have to bear in mind when deciding the timing of when to dupe, okay? Now let's move on to the first consideration of the characters, which is kind of the limited availability of them. Now, vast majority of characters, you'll be getting them through your summons, and you can see all of those by, if you actually go to, for example, select recruit or the superior recruit, you take a look at the pool info, and you can see all of the characters there. However, certain characters are not present in here. A good example would be, for example, if you have a battle pass character such as Hinata. Now, Hinata is not going to be in the standard banner, and in fact, he's not actually going to be added into standard banner anytime soon, because he would only be added from the 1st of October. So let's say if you actually want Hinata and you want to basically unlock additional skills for him, it's going to be very expensive for you to pull multiple copies through this battle pass banner. So instead, your milk to actually dupe them is actually going to be a good viable choice. And the other really good example is going to be Oikawa, because he is currently actually locked behind paywall. If you actually want to get extra copies of him, you actually need to spend actual paid diamond, which once again can get very expensive. So if instead you actually want to use your universal dupe or your milk on him, that's also going to be a very good choice of how to get him to a higher dupe level without spending too much resources. Now let's take a look at the tier list I put up, just so you guys know how many dupes do you actually want to invest in this kind of characters. Now, one thing which should be quite obvious to everyone is that obviously if you have unlimited resources in the world, all of the characters are going to benefit from, all 6 dupes on them, etc., in order to unlock all of their skills. So this tier list is not talking about, whether you should actually get someone to 6 dupes or not. It's more about resource management, so that if you have limited resources, which characters are actually going to benefit the most from their passive skills once you actually unlock them. And then you also get some character, for example Suki, who I have talked about a lot on my channel. He's one of the best characters in the game right now. However, he can function perfectly well without any dupe. Obviously, if you can max dupe him, he's going to be even better. However, the jump from 0 dupe to max dupe for Suki is nowhere near as large as the jump from, let's say, 0 dupe or 6 dupe on some of the other characters. So that's kind of why he's at the bottom tier. Not to say he's bad at full dupe, it's just that he doesn't need those extra dupes, okay? So please do interpret it that way. So let's start off at the top, which are the characters who are going to get massive change once you actually 6 dupe them. So first of all, Okawa. Now he's a pay to win, so that obviously makes him already very nice to actually dupe him rather than getting extra copies with real life money. But then the second thing is once you actually max dupe him, he can actually fire himself back to back as long as you are able to score. So that's kind of why it's going to be a massive game changer for him. And similar situation with Hinata. I think he needs to crit. However, when he crit, he can use his ultimate back to back again. So once again, it's going to be a massive game changer for him. And with him able to do his back to back, you don't then even need another character to act as your offensive attacking point and then free up your team building as well. So that's kind of it's a massive game changer for him. Then you have Tanaka. Now for Tanaka's one, once you actually max dupe him, whenever he scores, you're then going to get a massive buff. I think it's like 40% to off your power spikes for the rest of the match. So as long as you can actually choose your attack properly so that you can make sure you actually score when he does his spike, you're then going to benefit so much for the remainder of the match. And a lot of time, if you can't actually score with his spike, you can always just reset the match, right? Because in this game right now, there's no penalty for restarting a match. You're not going to lose any stamina or anything like that. So this is also going to be a massive game changer for him. And then lastly, we have Daichi. Now, Daichi is a bit of a special case. It's probably the lowest priority out of all of them. However, I'm still going to put it, but that's kind of why I put him at the end, is the fact that you're going to reduce the stamina consumption for the power spike right afterwards, which depending on who you're going to pair him up with, can be a massive game changer. A lot of time, you'll be pairing up Daichi with Asahi, and Asahi has insane stamina consumption. So if that's the case, and vast majority of the time you do see them paired up together, that is going to be a massive game changer for your team as well. So that's kind of why I do recommend Daichi at 6 dupe. However, if you're not actually going to pair up with Asahi, but potentially with someone else who is not actually going to be consuming so much stamina, then the value of 6 dupe is going to be immediately lower. So do bear that in mind when deciding whether you want to put extra dupes on Daichi. And in fact, if those cases, because you're only more kind of benefiting Asahi, it's probably going to be more beneficial for you to put the dupes in Asahi first before then moving on to Daichi. Okay, so that's kind of all of the characters I think you kind of need 6 dupes on. And then now let's move on to the 2 dupes. So first one I have Yushijima. Obviously, you can't use the SSR milks to actually dupe him. You have to use the UR version of the milk. However, just for completeness, I want to put him in anyway, in case you guys do get more UR milks in the future and you wonder whether it's actually worth for you to dupe them or whether you actually want to summon more on his banner. So for Yushijima, 2 dupe is a massive game changer because that's where you are then able to do your back-to-back ultimate if you actually build up your team correctly. As for how to actually build up your team correctly, I actually created a guide on how to build Yushijima, so please do check out on my channel, and I will link that in the comment section as well, okay? So Yushijima obviously going to benefit a lot from 2 dupes. He is obviously going to get better at 6 dupe, like all of the other characters. However, 2 dupe is kind of the massive game changer for him, so that's kind of why I put him at the top of the 2 dupe tier. But obviously, if you have all that money to go 6 dupe, then feel free to do so. It will be massive for him as well. Then we move on to Nishinoya. 2 dupes is a massive game changer because it reduces his stamina consumption. 6 dupes for me is not a must-have purely because you only buff your very first receive or very first save of the match, so it's a one-time use. So I don't think it's worth all of that extra resources to get him to 6 dupe. However, the saving up on your stamina consumption on 2 dupe is going to be massive, so that's kind of why he kind of need 2 dupe. Same thing with Ataki. 2 dupes allow you to save all your stamina, which is going to be massive. 6 dupe allow you to hit a lot harder or give more buff every single time when you use your ult, which once again is great. However, even with the help of Daichi, etc., to reduce the stamina consumption, he's still going to take a huge chunk of stamina each time. So he's still not going to be on the match for very, very long. So even though those buffs look very, very nice, you won't be able to stack too many times anyway. So that's kind of why 2 dupe I feel like is a massive game changer. 6 dupe is more of a nice to have. Then for Iwazu Yumi, 2 dupe is massive because it kind of increases the whole crit damage for your whole team, which is kind of the role he's playing. He's more kind of like a support utility character. 6 dupes, you are actually able to weaken the enemy's block, but like I said, vast majority of the time you will be using Iwata Yumi more for the support utility rather than using him to do the spike. So that's kind of why I felt like 2 dupe is kind of sufficient for him. Then we have Aeon. Aeon 2 dupe is a massive game changer. You are able to reduce the enemy stamina whenever you block rather than just something like a perfect block or something like that. So once again, it's going to be a lot easier for you to wear down the opponent. 6 dupe, it kind of requires, I think, the opponent to be less under certain stamina threshold, which is going to be quite rare for that happens, and also probably like only once or twice in a match. So that's kind of why I don't think it's worth it for 6 dupe. And that's also the similar situation for Kentaro. 6 dupe is kind of tied into your opponent's stamina to be under a certain threshold, so that's kind of why I don't think it's necessary. However, 2 dupe is pretty massive for him because you are then actually able to wear down the enemy's stamina by yourself, which once again is going to be a game changer, especially if you can see the opponent have someone like Asahi who already consume a lot of stamina. Using Kentaro to try to force that, it's going to make him drain his stamina even quicker. So that's kind of what 2 dupe is going to be very good for him as well. Then we move on to, I forgot his name, the setter from Daytech. 2 dupe is going to be nice because I think, let me just double check in the background. Yeah, so basically, as long as he's on the front row, you're able to reduce the opponent power attack. So you don't even need to do anything, just a very nice passive effect, which is going to be great. 6 dupes is not really necessary because you'll be increasing your setter dump. However, vast majority of the time, you won't really be needing your setters to do the setter dump. You should really be trying to spike or do more offensive plays with your wing spiker or opposite hitter, etc. So that's kind of why I don't think is necessary for 6 dupe. Then we move on to 0 dupes. So Suki, Kuro, and also Futakuchi, all of them are able to get debuff when you actually max dupe them, which is nice. However, if you think about the debuff is just I think like 10% less stats, which basically means it's a gap you can potentially bridge just by simply having better potential or higher level than your opponent. So it's not like a game changing mechanic. So that's kind of why, even though they are very nice buffs to have or debuff to have, I don't think it's really worth going after because it's not really going to change their playstyle when you add any extra new game mechanic, etc. And then as 3 dupes, your Suki is actually able to increase the receiving for your whole team. That can be very nice if you play Suki in Nekoma team, but other than that, it's probably not going to make a massive difference. For Kuro, the 2 dupe is able to allow you to stack up your quick spikes every single time when you do a quick spike. But once again, vast majority of the time, you probably won't be using your mid blocker as your main offensive firepower. So you probably won't even be able to stack it up too many times anyway in a match. So it doesn't really matter whether it's limited or unlimited. And then for Futakuchi, it just buff his surf at dupe 2 once again. You are probably, his surf is not even that strong to begin with, and vast majority of the time you probably only be serving once or twice in a match anyway with him. So once again, it's not going to be a game changer. So that's kind of why I feel like you don't need to do any of them at all. And then we move on to Sasaya, I think that's his name. His dupe is actually quite interesting because you're able to boost the firepower for both of your spikes and also block, and also reduce the cooldown for both of your spikes and also for your blocks, which is actually very nice, to be honest. The main problem once again is that vast majority of the time you wouldn't be using your opposite hitter to do the blocks, nor would you be using him to do the spikes when you have better options, right? If you have a wind spiker with power spike, you'll be using him to spike instead. If you have a mid blocker with a blocking skill, you'll be prioritizing them over Sasaya. So that's kind of why, even though the buff looks very nice on paper, in reality, when you actually get to a match, vast majority of the time you'll be forgotten them for a stronger attack or a stronger block on a different character on your team. So that's kind of why I don't feel like they're necessary either. And the last one is going to be Kageyama. This just improved his setter down, which kind of already mentioned earlier. Vast majority of the time, your offensive firepower should be coming from your wind spikers or maybe like Ushijima, etc. You shouldn't really even be needing your Kageyama to do too many setter dumps in a match. So once again, it's not really worth the extra dupes.